Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our free online lesson. My name is Nabil Fikri bin Shaizan and I'm an application engineer. So for today's topics, I would like to share you about the mesh tools inside of Fusion 360. Right, so I hope you can hear me and you can see me because I don't see that video box here. But this is the agenda for today's. So we're going to take a look on the mesh. Right, so first of all, we're going to import a mesh inside of Fusion, and we also want to convert from our 3D solids from Fusion into a mesh. Right, so mesh basically is a models that people create, such as from Blender or Maya, which can be exported out as an OBJ or STR files, and that particular model usually cannot be edited inside of CAD files, but in Fusion 360, you can actually do that. Now, once we have inserted our mesh inside of Fusion 360, so let's say we already done with the mesh and we want to use that mesh on our solid modeling tool. So we're going to convert the mesh to solid so we can use some other solid tools to cut and some other things that we can do for that. The third one, we're going to modify face group. So for example, if you see if you see, okay, so if you see this image over here, so we have this particular objects, and you can see some of the face has this triangle shape over here. So this is what we call as a mesh. This is triangle face. On top of this face is also triangles, a little bit different types of triangle, but basically it's actually the same, but the area of the triangles has been diverse. So we're going to modify that face. And then the third one, we're going to edit the mesh shape itself. So usually inside of CAD software, you cannot edit mesh file. So we're going to modify, so we're going to convert mesh into solid so we can edit the file itself. But inside of Fusion, we can also edit the mesh inside of the mesh tool itself without converting into a solid. So that is basically what we're going to take today. Right. So welcome Azan and Khairul Rizwan. Thank you for joining our film lesson. Right. So let me show the Fusion. Let me just switch to Fusion. Right. So let me see. Let me just turn this one off first. So this is inside of my Fusion. So what you see here, this is basically just a normal solid object. If I go into the utilities to section this object, then you can see inside it's actually a solid and not a hollow, not a surface. So it's a solid. And if I take a look on the other panel over here on the other tab, so this is actually a mesh tools, a mesh object, mesh model. If I go ahead in sections, and then you will see that is actually a hollow inside. So basically it's almost like a surface, but it's not actually a surface, it's a mesh. Mesh basically is a triangular face shape which has been combined together into a shape looking model. So this is basically mesh. Now, if you don't understand what mesh is basically the difference between solid CAD and mesh is that inside of this 3D solid basically used for engineering purpose, but if you happen to get an OBJ files which is created from the 3D modeling, which is not the CAD file, such as this Blender file that I have created before. So this is not an engineering CAD software. This is a mesh modeling software, which is for artistic purpose. So we can do some other things from here. For example, if I like to edit directly from the mesh itself, so I can edit from here, or if I want to sculpt, so I can use sculpt button and sculpt this particular area over here. So I can actually do that using this particular software. So basically, this is not a CAD software, which is the precision is not very important, but it's allow you to create this particular shape. And what I'm going to do is that this particular shape I wanted to import inside of my Fusion, so I can just go ahead and export out as an OBJ or STL file. And then when I head back to my Fusion, so for example, let's say if I'm using the new drawing, and then we have this solid, and we also have this mesh over here. So this is what we're going to work with, the mesh tools. So if I wanted to import a mesh tool such as from the OBJ or STL, so I can use this insert mesh tab over here, mesh tool over here, and I can pick my OBJ file. So let's say this island.obj over here. So basically there are three types of mesh tools that you can select: mesh file, STL, GMF, and also AVJ. I'm going to go ahead and open this one, and then you can see the file that I have created before on that modeling software can be imported inside of Fusion 360. Right, so basically this is not what we want to work with. So I'm going to choose other models, for example, this dinosaur over here, and also this end model over here, which I also create inside of Blender. Right. So okay, so once I have import this one, so you can see we also have this solid object over here. So if you like to work this solid with the mesh itself, also can. So you can convert this solid into a mesh. So on the create over here, so we have this insert, which you can insert mesh. But if you wanted to convert from the solid into mesh, you can use tessellate. So basically just click the bodies, and it allows you to create a mesh tools over here. You can set the surface deviation and so on. I'm just going to go with K over here, and it will create these mesh faces over here. So it's no longer a 3D solid. So if I go and section this one, you can see it is now a mesh face. Now comparing this one with the one that I have inserted, for example, this arm model over here. Now this model have one colors only. However, this model have multiple colors. So the reason why is because once we have import from solid, it's going to generalize each of these triangular face, the mesh triangular face, on the flat face, the face that you should have connected, combined. So, for example, over here we have this this orange color, or this color over here, and we have this green color over here, which I can select. So it's allow me to select based on its color. If I go ahead with this arm model and I click this one, it's going to select everything because the face, although the face is actually have the same color, but this one have different colors. So the colors allows you to differentiate between the face. So it's going to generalize this is actually an arc, have different face, it's not connected to this face does not connect to this face, and so on. Right. So for that, let me just go with the mesh environment over here. So we already have converted inside of the, we have converted into a mesh. So for example, if you import a mesh such as this arm over here, and you would like to convert it into a solid, so you can work with solid modeling tools, because directly from solid you cannot create sketch on top of this face arm face over here. You cannot use extrude, you cannot press pull, some of the things, so you can only work with mesh. So from the mesh, I want to convert it into solid. So for that, you can go to the modify, you can drop down, and then you can convert it into a mesh. You can convert this mesh into a solid. Now, once I open it here, I have several other options over here. We have the operation, parametric, and base features. Parametrics allow you to record the on the history down here. So if you make some changes, it's going to automatically update. If you don't want that, you can select base features. I'm going to go ahead with the parametrics. And then the method itself, I have three different methods. I have facet, I have prismatic, and organic. So if I use facet, I click this on, press OK, it's going to convert directly from the face itself, from the individual face itself, become the face from solid. So it's now become a solid. If I use section again, and I'll try to see what's inside, and I can see this one is actually a solid. So which means I can use some other solid tools, whether I want to cut it, if I want to press pulls, some of the things I can just use from here. So let's undo that and take a look on other two. On the modify, where is this convert? Oops, on the mesh, modify, convert mesh, and I have prismatic and organic. So organics allow you to create a T-spline looking shape, a very smooth looking shape. So in order to use organic, you need to have one object with this only one face looking colors over here, unlike this one over here. So this one has many colors. If I try to convert, it does not allow me. If I use organic, it does not allow me because I have many faces. But if I have faces like here, I can go ahead and convert and choose organic, and I press OK. So it's going to give me this organic smooth looking shape over here. All right, so let's undo that again, and we go with the third one. So the third one, basically prismatics allow you to convert this one a little bit more on facet, but also giving you the smooth options such as the curve and so on. In order to use this prismatic, you need to have different face group, which is different color, face color. This one we only have one, so if I click this one and I press OK, it's gonna give me an error. But if I go with this one, let's try to convert this one using the facet first, and you will see it give me this face, this mesh triangle face over here. I can actually clean it up by pressing on the face and press delete. So it's going to clean up the face, because you cannot actually use these faces over here. If I try to, from the solid, if I try to move, if I try to press pulls, it does not work. It's going to, let's say if I try to press pull this one, it's going to extrude the entire face itself. So you cannot actually do that. So you might want to remove that by clicking delete. However, if you have a curve like here, if I try to delete, it still delete, but it gives me this flat face. You don't want to use that flat face, because this is one should be curved. So if I move back to the top, you can see it's become a very flat face, because this is not actually a curve. It is a combination of straight line, right? And then make it looks like a curve. It's not actually a curve. But so you can still edit it using some other cut tools. Maybe you need to cut some hole, make it smooth on the inside. So you can still do that. But if you don't want to use manual work, you can still go back. Just undo that one. And you can use, on the modify, you can select convert mesh and select prismatic instead. So prismatic allow you to read the color, the face group here, and convert it based on each surface. So it's identified this has its own face group, this one has its own face group, so this one should be smooth round, right? So that is the this prismatic option over here. So you need to have multiple group color. So if I happen to have import this one, so if you import automatically, it's going to have only one color. So in order to do that, in order to give it multiple colors that I have, like the previous one, in the prepare, I have two options here. So I can generate a face group, which allow me to generate the face into multiple faces based on its edges. And I also have this combined group, face group, if I want to. This repair group is basically if you import your model and you have some holes and so on, so you can use repair. we don't need the S1. Let's say I'm going to generate this face, and I have this type. I'm going to go with accuracy of 0.001, which is a very high accuracy there. If I press OK, it's going to give me this multiple color. However, there are still some important notes that you may take a look, is that sometimes when generating the face, it's not very high that you want. There are still some other areas that you need to do it manually. For example, this face over here become one faces. If I try to convert this one into mesh, it still work, but you might have some problems with some other areas, such as this face over here. So let's go ahead and convert this mesh. I'm going to select this, and then you can see it is now converted into 3D solids. Some of the face become very smooth, but these faces over here become hollow. So same goes with this one. So you may need more. So you may need to add some more face group over here. But you cannot actually do that from here. But you can do that later on when using the direct edit option. Now the combined face, basically, if I have these two faces over here that I would like to combine, I can use combine. It allows me to combine, so it become one face. So I go back to the convert mesh. So you can see at the back of this arm, so it become very smooth. So that if you want to have a smooth transition, so you can use combine to manually edit that one. Okay, so before we add some more mesh face group over here, there are some other things that you can also do that over here, is that on the modify, you can actually remesh, which is regenerate back the triangle mesh tools over here. For example, if I would like to make more mesh over here, because it's very little mesh that you can see over here, very, very big mesh. And I want to remesh everything. So I can just select remesh, and I now have more mesh over here. So if I want to have some more, so I can just also edit this the settings, and I should have more mesh over here. If I want to reduce mesh, I can use reduce. For example, I have this dinosaur mesh over here, and if I take a look, this mesh is actually square. So square mesh is what we call as quad mesh. So if you have this quad mesh, generally it should not be a problem. If you want to use freeform modeling, T-spline, so it's allow you to directly edit and convert it, this quad mesh into a T-spline. So I can use convert, you can use quad mesh, and then I can select this one and convert. But let's say I don't want that, I can just go ahead, and from the mesh itself, I have too many faces over here. So generally, if I try to convert or do some cuttings and so on, it's going to take me some times. So what I can do is that I can reduce some mesh over here. So before I do that, so I can take a look first in the body of this mesh, on the properties, and over here we can see we have a face count around 140,000 mesh face over here. So it's quite a lot, and I want to reduce that. So reduce mesh, click over here. You can enable a preview if you want to. Let me just increase some more faces over here. It's okay. And it will reduce your mesh over here. So if I want to reduce some more, so I can just increase. So it gives me, is it decrease? Okay, so I need to decrease. It's give me a little bit more low mesh over here. Okay, so this looks much better. So if you needed to reduce the mesh, try not to over reduce, because it will lose the smoothness of this object. So this object, I don't have much much issue with this, because I don't have the very detailed shapes such as the eye or the mouth. So I can just use reduce mesh. But if you reduce too much, you're going to have a very, very low quality looking shape of it. So let me just undo that. And Right over here, currently we're going to have something around 6,000 mesh. So that's quite small, so should be okay. It's actually generally still big, but it is much better than before. Now let's take a look back. Let's say over here. So we have to take a look at the remesh and reduce. Let's say if I wanted to create some colors, I'm going to give different colors over here. I want to divide the face group. So in order to do that, I need to enter the direct edit, or you can find from here direct edit, and select the body and press OK. And then you can now select based on each triangle instead of this face. So if I close this one off, once I select some things, it's going to select the entire face group. So if you want to select the individual triangles, we can do that using direct edit. So I select OK, and now I have different filters, so such as face group or the entire body. So of course, when you use direct edit, you want to click based on triangle, and then you have this brush size. So if I move up until the down, I can select the individual. But if I want to select a little bit bigger, so I can just increase the brush size. Now my selection are more bigger, so I can easily select some other area very quick. Now let me just do some more, and I just wanted to select this line over here. And to give a different group, right now, if I go to prepare, I have additional face group. I can just click, and it allows me to color different face over here. I can go and give it some more. At the bottom over here as well. Just give it a bit of variation. And maybe some other area for here as well. Okay, so good. So we have created some new face group. And then let's see if I wanted to go and modify, convert the mesh into parametric. Right now, my object should look a little bit better compared to before. We still have some issue at the bottom, which I needed to also edit the color at the bottom, but generally we can see much improvement when we include our color method. So that is, you can edit the mesh itself. But let's say if you have this object over here, so this is still quite a lot face, and if you try to convert, it's going to take some time. So if you don't want to convert it, especially if you have very high detail model that you don't even want to reduce it, what you can do is that instead of convert, you can also edit directly from here. For example, if I need to cut some holes, so I can also do it from here. Now let's take a look on here. Let me just reduce some more. Right. Let's say if I needed to make some hole at the top of here. So maybe I needed to use this object as a stationary holder. Maybe I need to put some pencil on this hole over here. Right. So I needed to make some cut before I do 3D printing of this model. So instead of convert and use solid to cut, what I'm going to do is that on the mesh itself, we have several other edit. We have plane cut, we have shell. So shell basically allow you to create some hollow inside of here. Right. So if I use shell, so I can select over here, and let's say I give it around 1 millimeter thickness. And then it's going to have a hollow inside of this mesh. So we don't actually see it, but if I go and reduce the opacity, say 600, and you can see it's actually hollow inside of this mesh. Right, so we don't actually need a hollow. Let me just reduce and just delete the hollow and set back to 100 opacity. Right now, I'm going to create a hole on top of this. So in order to do that, we can use combine boolean, which we can use to join, cut, or intersect. So we can do that. So we need another mesh. So for that, I'm going to click under the mesh from here. Let's say I'm going to create a ellipse, this around 50. Say this is the hole that I needed to create. Right. So I'm going to extrude this one and give it a taper. And I'm okay with this. And maybe I needed to add some fillet, so I can add some fillet if I want to. Okay, cool. So I want to use this 3D solid to cut through my dinosaurs over here. So on the mesh, I needed to convert this into a mesh first. So I'm going to go with tessellate and convert into mesh. If you wanted to remesh this, you can do that. So it will remesh, but let's just leave it as is. And we can go into the modify and use combine. So in combine here, we need to use a cut operation. And I'm going to select my bodies, my dinosaur as a cut, and I'm going to use tools to cut through my dinosaurs. Again, this body is still quite some big mesh over here. So of course, it's still going to take some time. If I take a look back on the properties, the mesh, I have around 43,000 meshes. So this method should be okay. But if you want to reduce some more, rather than reducing the mesh, I can cut some of the section. Probably the head I don't need to use as a cutting tools, or the tails I don't need to include this one. So I can go and modify, and I'm going to use plane cut, and I'm going to cut through here. All right, so up until, let's say, up until here. Okay, cool. So this plane can allow you to cut. You can edit it from here if you needed to, but let's just go with, oops, let's see, cut. All right, so let's say jump up until here. I want to reduce this front mesh. So instead of trim will be cut, I'm going to only split the body. So it's now split into two. Now I don't need the tail as well, so I'm going to reduce that. Again, plane cut. I'm going to give it here. Okay, so the head and the tail, I can temporarily turn this one off. Oops. Now I have this area over here that I would like to cut through. So if I go into the mesh, I should have lower mesh here. So the mesh now around 22, so a little bit lower for me to be for. So it should be faster if I want to do some cutting operation. So let's go with the combine, and I'm going to select my body to cut. Oops, my body to cut, and I'm going to use tools this to cut through with. That's okay, and it should cut through here. So hopefully it works. If that's not, there are some things that I might need to take a look, such as this horn. Okay, so far it is working. So you can see it is now cut through here. So I needed to see my front and also tails. And right now we have this hollow, which I can use this to put some stationery or some things on this object over here. So basically that is the mesh tool. So some things that you can do from here. You can convert back into solids and some other things. Right, so that is all that I would like to share with you. So if you have any question, you can free to ask the question on the chat, or you can also unmute yourself. So I will stay over here a few more minutes before we can turn off the session. Right, by the way, this object here is now become a fusion object. So if you needed to export it out, so you can still go on the file, and you can export out such as STL file or OBJ files or anything. If you needed to export to you to do some 3D printing on this object. Right, so that is all that I would like to share for now. So I don't see any comment or questions. So I hope this session is useful for you. So if you don't have any questions, so I believe we can stop right here. And I would like to thank you, you guys, for joining these free lessons. And have a nice day. So thank you and goodbye.